Good afternoon. We are live from Council Chambers. Before we begin, I'm going to go over the emergency response plan for this room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery will take direction from security, and Council will take direction from the meeting clerk to evacuate. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell, take the stairs to ground level, and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit, and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security or the meeting clerk during an evacuation, and please speak with security or the meeting clerk if you require first aid. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to call the August 15th Emergency Advisory Committee meeting to order. I'll note that Mayor Sohi is absent on a personal matter, at least for the moment. And I'll start by acknowledging that we convene today on the traditional lands of Treaty 6, which is also the home of members of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Inuit, and non-status Indigenous peoples. We recognize the long history and contributions of Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land from time immemorial to the present. We are committed in the spirit of truth and reconciliation to working collaboratively to steward the land we share as we plan for a future for all citizens. And we acknowledge that we are all treaty people, bound to one another by the spirit and intent of treaty. As long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the river flows. I will start with a roll call of participants today. Councillor Wright.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councillor Principe.
Hello.
Hello, Councillor Knack.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councillor Stevenson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paquette.
Present.
Good afternoon, Councillor Tang. Oh, Councillor Tang sent us a note. She might be a few minutes delayed. Mayor Sohi may be along later. Councillor Hamilton.
Present.
Councillor Rutherford.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Salvador is also running behind. Councillor Rice.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Councillor Jans.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I would take a motion for adoption of the agenda.
So moved, with the addition of 3.1 Emergency Management Program Update.
Thank you. Please vote.
Second.
No seconds required. We're at committee.
Committee. Sorry.
Councillor Stevenson is
Councillor Wright is a yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton's a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Wright. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Approval of the minutes. And I pose on you, Councillor Knack.
Absolutely. I love moving minutes. So I will move the adoption of the minutes from the January 23rd, 2024 Emergency Advisory Committee and the May 3rd, 2024 Special Emergency Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you. Please vote.
Councillor Hamilton's a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Selection of protocol items. I'm not aware of any. Selection of items for debate. There's only one item. So why don't we deem that selected? 3.1. And as that's the only item on our agenda, why don't we move directly to the presentation?
Good afternoon. I am here as the Director of Emergency Management, presenting to you as the Emergency Advisory Committee. I'm joined today by David Lazenby, the Acting Fire Chief, Tiffany Edgecombe, the Deputy Fire Chief of Community Risk and Safety, Ryan Tanowski, the Assistant Deputy Chief of Emergency Management and Communications, Warren Dreichel, the Deputy Chief of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Bureau. And available online today, we have Troy Cordarelli, Travis Kennedy, and Rod Kashowski from the Office of Emergency Management, Courtney Teleski, Darren Grove, and Mark Beer from Parks and Road Services Infrastructure Operations Section. There are a number of people here that can provide input from the corporate perspective, but we will also be happy to follow up after the fact if there are any additional technical questions that cannot be resolved today. Our objective today is to update on the activities of the city's emergency management program and to have a discussion as requested by council at the last emergency advisory committee meeting on how we are positioning this work in the upcoming years. This information includes a review of the program governance, a 2024 program update, and a discussion on next steps we are taking to prepare for increasing demand on the Office of Emergency Management. I will now turn it over to Chief Lazenby to continue the presentation.
Thank you. Today I wanted to briefly remind you of the key components of our city's emergency management program and the documents that guide it. Firstly, we have three main stakeholder groups that are crucial to our emergency management efforts. Yourselves as the Emergency Advisory Committee, providing strategic oversight and policy direction for emergency management within the city. ELT as the Emergency Management Agency to implement emergency plans and coordinating response efforts. And the Office of Emergency Management in Edmonton Fire and Rescue Service that acts as the central hub for emergency management activities. It focuses on the day-to-day operations and ensuring that resources and information flow smoothly. In addition to these groups, there are 4 documents that govern our emergency management framework. The Provincial Emergency Management Act, which outlines the responsibilities and powers related to emergency management at the provincial level. The Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation, which provide guidelines specific to local authorities, helping us tailor our emergency response to our community's needs. The city's municipal emergency plan that details our city's specific emergency procedures, resources and contacts, and the Emergency Management Bylaw as the legal framework for our emergency management within the city, including the roles and responsibilities of various stakeholders. Together, these groups and documents ensure that our city is well prepared to handle emergencies effectively. Each group has a distinct role from strategic oversight to operational management, and our governing documents provide the legal and procedural foundation needed to support our efforts. 2024 has been a dynamic year from an emergency management perspective so far. And I'm pleased to say that our employees have professionally, collaboratively and capably handled this important work that often happens with short notice and run long hours into the evenings and weekends to support Edmontonians and neighbours who are in need of our support. After a busy wildfire season in 2023 and projections of a dry, hot wildfire season, the Office of Emergency Management anticipated it would continue to see increased demands and pressures this year, and this has held true. We have tackled many programme components and experienced extended EOC activations since January, with some events overlapping. We've worked with our corporate partners to prevent, mitigate and respond to this increased demand and communicate priority information to yourselves and the public. This spring presented hot, dry conditions and increased fire risk. When we were last here in the spring, we spoke to how we were well prepared to mitigate risk here in the city, particularly the River Valley, and how we were preparing capacity to ready ourselves for requests for assistance. This involved 2 main activities. The first was the establishment of an agreement with the Canadian Red Cross to coordinate food and lodging services for evacuees. This agreement is for 2024 only and will be evaluated at the end of the season. For the most part, we have seen evacuees being quickly and comfortably placed in hotels, and based on the activations we have had today and anticipation that it may take several more weeks of assistance before Jasper residents can return home or to long-term accommodations, yesterday we brought to Executive Committee a request to increase the contract value in order to maintain capacity if needed. The second was the establishment of the Rapid Emergency Support Terminal at the Cannondale site. This collaborative work with property services, real estate and city operations has allowed us to have consistent access to a set location for the wildfire season, reducing our need to rely on the availability of Edmonton Expo or city recreation facilities and the impacts that has on their business. We are tentatively planning an open house in August 2024 to showcase this location and its functionality. I'll now hand it over to Chief Tanowski.
Thank you. While the wildfire response to our neighbors receives a large amount of public attention and is a source of community pride, the Emergency Operations Center has been regularly activated to support other emergency management activities. Significant amount of work has been focused on the city's enhanced encampment response and the extended Edmonton Oilers playoff run. The work has improved community safety in our downtown core and reduced fire risk in parkland and river valley spaces. Supported our city's economic prosperity as it hosts international high-profile sporting events and ensured that we can maintain core services during the activation of business continuity plans. At the same time, we've been able to provide compassionate care and support to our neighbors during wildfire activations. Between Fort McMurray and Jasper, we have helped nearly 4,500 evacuees so far this wildfire season, and we are well prepared to answer the call again if needed. The Office of Emergency Management and Enterprise Risk Management teams work closely to ensure a comprehensive understanding of risks and threats, enabling the development of effective mitigation strategies and emergency response plans. We use the provincial HIRA system as well to ensure that we are integrated with the province of Alberta. For example, based on the high level of wildfire risk this summer, the team has established a drone program to proactively monitor the river valley for possible fire risks. The program allowed for easy monitoring of large areas and has demonstrated efficacy in supporting response, as drones allow for emergency crews to locate fires in wooded areas much faster with an eye in the sky to help direct them to locations off of pathways. Other examples include the all-terrain pump trucks to our fleet in fire rescue services. These trucks are better equipped to tackle fires in the wildland interface and are able to access locations that historically would have been challenging for our fire crews. We know our urban, parkland, and river valley are treasured spaces in our community. The city is tackling current fire and related risks in the natural areas in a number of ways. More specifically, I'd like to highlight 7 points. 1, using vegetation management to act as a buffer zone between natural areas and residential areas, helping to slow fire spread and reduce fire intensity before reaching structures. Secondly, working with communities to educate individuals around the importance of fire-smart principles on private property. Third, fire risk mapping for natural areas and river valley. This work is being completed in cooperation with the University of Alberta and is led by the Natural Areas team in Parks and Road Services. Fourth, provide weekly monitoring of natural areas using remotely piloted aerial systems or drones. Fifth, reducing the risk by managing the load of dead and higher risk vegetation in natural areas. 6, all-terrain pumper trucks that I mentioned already, previously routed to wet slopes and grassland areas where there have been previously occurrences of fire. And finally, 7, Parks and Road Services has added a temporary wildfire technician to the team for the 2024 season to coordinate vegetation management activities and educate operational staff on ways to reduce fire risk in their work. I'd like to talk about communication now. Effective communication is a critical component of emergency management. Pre-emergency, the city has dedicated Edmonton Fire Rescue Service and the Emergency Operations Center communication resources to support proactive preparedness and ongoing needs to increase public awareness and education around emergencies and the importance of being prepared. The city has established various communication campaigns. In 2024, a public education campaign was launched to improve awareness of the actions that we can take from around their property and when outdoors anywhere across Edmonton to mitigate fire risks and their potentially devastating consequences. The public is also invited to preparedness events and activities such as Get Ready in the Park. This event allows people of all ages to come and meet first responders from a variety of agencies, get tips on emergency preparedness, and explore some of their equipment. In addition, the city has a robust crisis communications plan that supports the municipal emergency plan and trained communication professionals across the organization to ensure we are available 24/7 to support an emergency response when needed. Led by the Office of the Chief Communications Officer, upon activation, communication staff are relocated to deliver on both internal and external communication needs, including media relations, stakeholder and staff communications, dignitary visits, social media, environmental and social media monitoring, 311 messaging, web and creative productions, and leadership briefings from both ELT and Council year to date. Communication staff have committed to over 1,600 people hours to deliver this important work. The Office of Emergency Management takes a forward-looking, collaborative approach to prepare for the challenges of the future. Key components of this approach include conducting corporate training and staying abreast of best practices, ensuring the appropriate partnerships are built and maintained with key stakeholders and surrounding jurisdictions. Additionally, we are building an augmentation program, the Emergency Management Augmentation Program, or EMAP, that will ensure that we have adequate and competent staff for surge resourcing during critical events. Year to date, we have trained over 104 staff in both introductory and emergency management core systems, as well as the ICS 200 level. We have an additional 7 courses planned for the fall, and another 105 staff will be trained in incident command systems by the end of the year. While training is a critical component, having these staff available is important. We are exploring the possibility of a potential short-term redeployment of staff across the corporation to meet surge resource needs for hazard season in Edmonton. Hazard season for us here in Alberta runs from about March to about October every year. In addition to short-term support, as the city has grown and new challenges arise, climate change has resulted in increased needs to support emergencies. The Office of Emergency Management is exploring the potential transfer of positions from other areas to increase year-round capacity to our teams. Finally, a key component of a robust emergency management system includes performing exercises related to critical incidents. We have 2 exercises planned over the coming months, one related to aging infrastructure, focused on water, similar to what happened to Calgary, and another focuses on wildlife response within the city of Edmonton. Now I'd like to return it to Chief David Lesley to continue with the presentation.
In September, audit findings and recommendations from the review of the Emergency Support Response Team will be presented to committee. We're looking forward to this report and findings, as it will support us in further enhancements to our emergency response. Additionally, we're currently engaging with a consultant to review the emergency management program to help us determine what a growing Edmonton may require in the years to come. As you can see, our emergency management program is tried and tested and continues to deliver positive results. That being said, it is a reality in emergency management that we are finding ourselves in a response phase with increasing frequency. We are seeing continued impacts of climate change and weather-related natural disasters. Locally, we have seen an expansion of a traditional emergency management mandate to proactively support responses, such as the encampment response and the high-profile nature of international sporting events. This means that we simply cannot assume that a strong program will remain strong on its own. We must continue to assess our current situational context and plan for our future needs. This is why we are taking a number of steps to prepare for future events. It's premature to assume the outcome of these reviews, but we look forward to coming back to you in 2025 with the results and recommended next steps. Thank you. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you for your presentation. We'll now go to questions from committee members. Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to hone in on the EOC and specifically the encampment because I had sent an inquiry in July, and my understanding was there was a plan to wind down, but I'm seeing that it's still going on. And I had asked the questions in that email that were sent to all of council, what triggered this, what would stop triggering this? Because again, we're at a point where, the EOC, if you look at that chart, used to be enacted maybe once or twice a year. Now it's like it's never deactivated if we're going to have, 170 some odd days that we're enacting this. So can somebody, it was mentioned, but at a very high level, and it was not mentioned in anywhere in that report specific to, any decisions or discussion that are happening around that.
Yeah, I can probably respond to that. The date that we're looking to wind that down is September 3rd. So we're just working through the program to wind that down, and it'll be deactivated on September 3rd for the encampment response.
So what triggered the activation? Because I know, so it was triggered in the winter. Like what conditions changed that triggered it, and what do we think is going to happen on September that's going to untrigger it, and what was the benefit of that? What changed as a result of having the EOC with our encampment response? Like, I'm not getting clarity on all of that.
Yes, Councillor. So the reason why the EOC was activated back in January was to bring together a whole range of stakeholders to kind of coordinate and collaborate in an effective manner. And the EOC is a prime.
But that should be standard operating procedure. That should not be an emergency operations center.
We were asked by the previous city manager to create an incident command structure, which ICS as we refer to it, to coordinate the setup of that. Bearing in mind we had the GOA, we had Edmonton Police Service, and a whole range of city branches and departments that were assisting in this response. So that's what we were tasked with, and that's what we created.
So what is the response? So is the response encampment clearing, or is the response because usually, again, like if we have an emergency, we usually have a reception center. I know there's the navigation center we've talked about with the province, but that doesn't necessarily provide shelter, doesn't provide like long-term housing. Like it's hard for me to accept this report today for information when something so big is so ambiguous with me as a decision maker on something that is, and the recent news articles are very concerning to me in terms of the harm we're causing. And we know we've had reports from people with lived experience of experiencing homelessness that have talked about the damage that this causes physically, emotionally, mentally, all of those things. So I'm wanting to accept this for information, but I don't think I can at this point if we don't properly address this. And then what is the plan for this winter so that this does not happen again?
So to your point on why was it activated, this was a people-centered approach. This wasn't about closing encampments. This was about trying to get vulnerable people to the services that they need. The Navigation and Reception Centre provided us with access to vital services and resources that we didn't previously have in a kind of one-stop shop type of environment. And that's why the EOC was established, to bring together multiple stakeholders who don't often typically work together on a day-to-day basis. And it's worked to good effect. In fairness, I'm going to defend the staff that are involved in this because they've worked incredibly well together, and they take great pride in the people who have accepted our offer of help and transportation to the Navigation Centre, and the financial benefits, access to shelter spaces, ID services, substance treatment services. That's what this activation was about.
I'm out of time.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report, and maybe just to build on some of the questions raised by Councillor Rutherford. So appreciate having a bit more clarity on the timelines with the EOC standing down for encampment response coming up shortly. What do we see moving forward? What does that? I mean, and perhaps that's outside of this meeting, as it will be outside of the EOC. But some high level information would be helpful.
Yeah, high level, we've developed a standard operating procedure. We're working with our partners across the corporation for the maintenance to move in from the EOC to a maintenance phase. So back to where they were, but with all of the lessons that we've observed so that they can be learned and implemented. So creating efficiencies and effectiveness and making sure that we have that the information loop continues to go. I mean, so far we've had 5,124 visits at the navigation center, and 2,957 of those have been unique one-time visitors. So every day, around 45 to 50 people show up there, and every day about half of them are new, and they're all getting the services, the essential services that they require, which is, I think, a remarkable thing.
Thank you for that clarification. So if I'm to understand, so the people impacted that's provided on one of the slides, sorry, I don't have, I think slide 5. So when it says EOC activations to date, the encampment response, 5,000 visitors. So that's 5,000 people who were in encampments who subsequently went to the navigation center, not necessarily the total number of people in encampments that EOC would have interacted with.
So the numbers in slide 5, just under 5,000 people, 4,500 people that I refer to were evacuees, completely separate from the encampment. Those are evacuees that have been
I'll
assisted.
just clarify then, maybe it's not slide 5, but the slide titled 2024 Program Highlights, EOC Activations to Date, that has a list of all the activations and the dates.
Yeah, I'm tracking that now. So what is your question? Sorry?
So the 5,000 people impacted noted for the encampment response,
Yes.
that's the 5,000 that did attend the navigation center, not necessarily total that were involved with the encampment response.
That's 5,000 that attended the navigation center, correct?
Okay, and do we have the information in terms of individuals in the encampments that were interacted with by EOC or members of the team?
No, I do not have every individual that was in the encampments. No, we didn't track that. Wasn't an enforcement issue. It was more like, how can we help you? We have a navigation center. We can every person that was in an encampment that was talked to by city staff, whether it was police, park rangers, every one of them extended a hand to offer them help and to bring them to navigation center if they wanted to, or find them a temporary shelter.
Okay, maybe just in terms of the encampment response moving forward, maybe Mr. Robar, do we have plans in place in terms of, our encampment response policy continues to be focused on connecting people, rapidly housing people and connecting them to the services that they need while mitigating risks to individuals and the public generally. Do we have plans in place to do some of that data monitoring in terms of number of people impacted, reasons why people are not accepting services or not able to access services?
I'd have to look into that. I think it's a great question. I think there's, a difference between who is going to the navigation center and how many touch points have we had. So
great.
If
okay.
I
appreciate that. I'm just mindful of time. Sorry.
We might go over to the deputy chief there.
If I may, Councillor.
Sure.
So during the beginning of the Operation Enlightenment in January, we were filling out administrative sheets in the EOC that cataloged every engagement with an individual. So not distinct individuals, but interactions. So there was tracking done specifically to those operations. What's not captured in that data is a few things. The first is the names of individuals. We weren't going out and identifying everybody. The point was not enforcement. It was to try to direct them to services. And we didn't want it to be a police identification process. The second thing that that data doesn't capture was all the other efforts going on within other agencies, social agencies, police service, our police service, that was connecting with people through, say, the help teams, beats, our disruption teams, HSOC, that were connecting with people and referring them to or taking them to the navigation center. So in terms of the data that was presented in the media, it's a very small subset of the data of people living in encampments that were interacted with by the police or by social agencies. It was only those interacted with by teams tasked out of the Emergency Operations Center. The other thing that we saw was that at the beginning of that work in January, or mid-January, was a high adoption rate of people. I know that, again, it was erroneously said that it was 80 and 20%. For the first 2 weeks of that operation, 40% of the people were accepting services. The next 2 weeks, which is works 3 and 4, was 35% of the people, 36% of the people. Then what we saw was very less people within the encampments, and we started to see what would be a bias repeat. So the same individuals that were refusing services are now we're coming across them again. Again, we can't extrapolate that data because we didn't identify them, and that wasn't the purpose of the operations. So again, we have to be very cautious when we talk about the low adoption rate. I think the numbers are more important are to look at what the government can report on as the people that were actually there.
And I'm well out of time, but happy to come back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, with the funding for the Red Cross that was approved yesterday, I do understand that that's reimbursed through the province. Is that right? And I'm seeing some nodding, but I'm not getting any verbal confirmation. So, yes, okay. So, and where are we in that reimbursement? Are we still waiting for reimbursement from 2023?
Yes.
How much?
Councillor Wright, I don't have those numbers with me. I can send them to you later.
Okay, so, but we still, and is there any reason for the delays that we've been advised of?
So I think, like, I appreciate that we would like to get our money as quickly as possible. The process here is that we step in and help municipalities. We invoice those municipalities. Those municipalities have to prepare a disaster recovery plan. That needs to be accepted by the province. And so there's just a lot of steps to ensure that the funding that is being paid is appropriate.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can recognize there's probably higher priorities that those municipalities have to deal with, but yeah, I just don't want to be off the province's radar for what's owing. So, okay, so that's for the wildfires. What about, because the Navigation Center is also a provincial initiative, are they reimbursing us for any of the funding that we're spending to stand up the EOC for them?
No, the EOC is not covered. Those costs of the EOC are not covered in the grant.
And why not? Like, does it not fall under emergency management, or?
Well, the grant is a specific grant that's written to provide support for of the removal of campants and providing assistance to the cleanup of all the material there and helping get vulnerable people to the navigation center.
That's what the grant is for, you said?
Yeah, that's what the grant is for.
But so if we're doing that, then why aren't we getting the grant? Because you said we're not being reimbursed. I'm just...
Well, we're not reimbursed for the EOC. So the funding for the Emergency Operations Center, the personnel are there, they're not funding that. They're funding everything else around it, not the EOC.
So we're being reimbursed for cleanup?
He's talking about two different grants. One is we have a grant from GOA that helps us with emergency management cleanup. What you're talking about is the emergency activation, and are we being repaid for the costs of activation?
Yes. So we are.
So the wildfire, we are getting reimbursed for the wildfire costs.
Okay, for the EOC, standing up the EOC
Correct.
for that, but not for
encampments.
Not for the encampments, to help them support their navigation center. And okay, but you just said that there was a grant that we're getting reimbursed for the encampment cleanup itself.
It's not a reimbursement, it's a grant that we received that we're spending off of.
Does that totally offset the costs for our encampment cleanups?
No.
what percentage? 10%?
I'm not sure the percentage.
Okay.
I could probably elaborate on that a little bit, Councillor Wright. So how that grant worked out for the encampment cleanup is we have a base amount of staff. And so like from a people budget time equipment perspective on encampment cleanup, what that $4 million specifically dedicated for encampment cleanup, what we did with that was just calculate how many more people could we employ in order to do this. And so then that just took the average amount of time that it took to clean up an encampment, and again, vacant encampment, down to about 24 hours. And so then there's been an influx in staff and therefore a proportional decrease in the amount of time it takes. And so then what we have is the ability to spend that $4 million until the end of this year. And so then our people will follow that. And then once that's spent, the service level will return back to pre-grant levels, which is roughly between, a week or two, depending on the complexity and details of it. So it's not necessarily a percentage of how much does that grant cover in terms of the entire encampment cost. We use that to staff up to reduce the amount of time it takes to clean. Does that help?
It helps a little bit. I wasn't aware of the amount of the grant, so that does help. But I do have some further questions on the standing up the EOC. I'll come back for a second round. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the report and the presentation. Question just about, I guess, in relation to the Navigation Center, sharing of data from the province. Like, do we, given that the EOC was stood up, I guess what is our ability to request, I guess, additional data and metrics, or is it simply what the province is willing to share with us? And I ask that because, I appreciate the data that's been shared around sort of the sheer number of individuals who have arrived at or been able to access the Navigation Center, but also continue to be very interested in data and metrics around once they have been connected with those supports and services or housing, whether or not they're, staying in housing or actually sort of moving further down that path.
So I have not been asked, as far as I know, nobody in the EOC has asked them for that information. Everything we've asked so far, we've been given. They're very open and transparent with the numbers that they have, but we have not specifically asked for that data that you are mentioning.
Okay, maybe I'm pausing because and maybe this isn't necessarily the best place for the conversation, but I'll flag that I feel like a number of us have asked that question, and I think it's just a really important data point to know, what is that, what's the efficacy of the Navigation Center look like for not only connecting people to those services, but being able to follow them on their journey.
Yeah, and I think the one slide I think shows the 5,000 people that have been moved to the Navigation Center. Of those 5,000, or almost 3,000 of them I think are unique. So that would give you an indication of somewhat of unique visitors versus repeat visitors to the Navigation Center.
Right. And I guess what I'm interested in is not only the unique visitors or the repeat visitors, but once they are at the Navigation Center and they're connected with those supports and services.
How many are housed? How many are getting...
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if...
We'll look into that and I'll get you the information.
Great. Thank you. And then just for clarity, I want to be crystal clear about just the percentage or the number of people who have accepted support when encampment teardowns are happening to the Navigation Center.
Sorry, and your question is you'd like clarification on the numbers?
Yeah, because I've seen a few percentages thrown out at this point, but just want to make sure I have the right one.
Yeah, so are you referring to the information that was provided in the media?
Yes.
Yeah, so as I described, that was based on some administrative reports that showed daily activities of only the operations out of the Emergency Operations Center, so teams tasked by that entity. The data itself does not represent of all the people that, say, the police service may have come across living in encampments due to the other teams that were working outside of those operations, our help teams, patrol teams. As I said, within the first 4 weeks of the operations, we saw high adoption of people going to the navigation center from January 17th on. First 2-week period was 38%. The second 2-week period following was 36%. Then the numbers started to drop off. And these are the numbers that were used to present the information in the media, which again was erroneous. So if you have a specific question, I can try to answer it, but I'm trying to just provide clarity on exactly what you're.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think I saw a 10% number that was out there around the number of people who actually accepted help. So again, just trying to have a better understanding of.
All I can work on is the data that was provided as part of the FOIP request that, was the foundation for the media articles. And there's a lot more data out there that we would have to start to go through in terms of police reports, contact reports. But I can tell you there's a lot of unreported data on this too, right? Where police officers, for instance, may deal with subjects and just talking with them, refer to them to the nav center or refer them that direction. We don't know what the outcome is, right? So.
Okay, I might come back for another round, but I really appreciate the answers and clarity.
Thank you. Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel. I received an email from a constituent, just, very compassionate and concerned with the evacuees from the fires, and had asked if it's possible to do have a dedicated space, a dedicated evacuation center with lodging and amenities. I just wanted to know administration's opinion on the feasibility of that.
Yes, I think there's pros and cons to a dedicated site to that extent. During the Fort McMurray fires here in Edmonton, we set up something along those lines, and with kind of mixed success and also some challenges as well that came in terms of some behaviours. What we've found is the model that we're running right now seems to work to best effect. We're able to very quickly and efficiently give people access to all the services that they need, get them into very comfortable hotel accommodation with all the services that it provides, and also meal vouchers so they can choose where they would like to eat if they have particular requirements or preferences. And, we provide them with support services, mental health services, pet services. So I think, Edmonton is known as providing the Cadillac of reception centres, and that's not our words, that's the Canadian Red Cross. So I say this proudly on behalf of everybody that contributes to those services, that I think we do a good job for people who are in need.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And then I do have a question about, I know that there was some in your presentation today, you had mentioned about the climate change increasing activations. But when I look at the chart and I see an increase in activations, but then on attachment 1, but then when I read the activations, only 2 out of the 7 activations are actually in relation to fires, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Are we tracking our risk, our risk prevention and mitigation? Have we been on par with that? Are we increasing that? Is that not where we should be, focusing?
I wouldn't say we're tracking it in the truest sense of the word. We are very much mindful and taking responsibility for preventative efforts. The drone program is one such example where we're being very proactive in, flying that down the river valley, identifying kind of risk, active fires that we might not find till they're a much bigger problem, and then being able to deal with them. There's but one example. The Fire Smart program, where we're engaging with neighbourhoods. I think Councillor Jans, his kind of community is going to be one of the first there with neighbourhood recognition program. So we're going to be educating residents around how they can fire smart their properties in their neighbourhoods, and also hopefully be able to receive a reduction in insurance premiums through the cooperators. So there's a whole range of things going on. We're doing things within the fire department, parks. They've done citywide risk assessments for both the River Valley and the White Mud Creek. So that can kind of guide our work more informed ways around things like vegetation management. And then we're also within the fire service looking at how we can create structure protection plans so that if a fire did kind of take hold in the river valley, our frontline firefighters and officers are informed about which properties might be more at risk than others, and kind of create strategies in terms of our approach to protect those that are most vulnerable first. So I would say it's not so much we're tracking, we're doing.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And I would love to be a part of that Fire Smart as well. What about enforcement and maybe, I don't know what our fines are for enforcement, or do we need to look at that? Is that something we need to consider to make it, just to encourage folks to follow the rules?
I think we have mechanisms in place right now. It's not something that we've kind of actively pursued to this point. We're trying to encourage kind of, adherence to appropriate behaviours. We're trying to work with people, but it is a mechanism that we could deploy if we felt it was necessary. But like I say, we're trying to work with people right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paquette.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on some of those questions because a number of us have wards that we serve that border on the river valley. So one of the questions that I got is, okay, so if we have isolated incidents, maybe some fire, people understand we probably have the capacity to go and handle that, and we have in the past. To the point of like drier, hotter seasons, people are now worried about multiple incidents at once, and if we have the capacity to handle that.
I would say yes, we do. With council support, we've created a fire service that's suitably resourced. Obviously, nobody can predict the scale of any event, as tragically we've seen, in recent times. But within reason, we have the resources that we need. We also, for reassurance, we also have mutual aid options as well. Our neighbours, typically we've gone and helped our near and far neighbours, from Strathcona County, Parkland, right up to Yellowknife. We've gone and helped others, but that mechanism also exists the other way as well. So in turn, if we needed additional resources, we could call on them.
Okay.
And maybe just to follow up on that, I mean, one of the things in the presentation, when you see the new pieces of equipment that we're purchasing that help us with incidents like that, we're always mindful of what equipment we need to battle different types of blazes or what that looks like. So you'll see that transition happening as we look at new pieces of equipment that can help us do those things as well.
Okay, and then one other question, and I honestly have no idea what the answer would be here, and that is, were something to happen that got out of our control in Edmonton or right next to us so that the smoke was just incredible, not safe for people, what would Edmonton do? What do Edmontonians do? What would we do as a city in that situation?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. If you mention smoke, they would probably provide some public messaging that would make some recommendations to stay inside if all possible, mask up. There's not a lot you can do about it. And if it's fire, it's a different story. We have partnerships, mutual aid agreements, and lots of people that would help us, including the provincial wildfire team.
Right, and then so if people were forced to evacuate, we're talking about large numbers with a big municipality. So I'm just...
Councillor, I can understand your concern and your questions. I think we have to be mindful of, yes, we are a big city, but we're also a very built-up city. We have a large river valley, I'll acknowledge that. But the spread of a fire, depending on the wind direction, would quickly abut, kind of a subdivision, which kind of from a fire spread perspective creates a different type of fire behaviour in the sense of it almost, it's not good that any structure would be involved in a fire that started in the river valley, but it also is an aid in terms of before, the fire could spread further into that community. So I don't want to fearmonger or, have people have unnecessary concern of, kind of a few 100,000 people needing to evacuate, I think, we need to be, you never can foresee what, nature might do, but I think we have to be realistic as to how fire would travel if it kind of, breached the top of the river valley and then connected into, subdivision.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be alarmist, it's just these are the questions that I've been asked and I did not have an answer for it.
Yeah.
So the answer then to the public would be?
So I think there are a number of things. One, activation, as Chief Tanowski said, in terms of informing the public about measures that they can take to shelter in place if it was an air quality situation. If it was evacuation with a number of our partners, such as EPS and others, we would evacuate that community if it breached the top of the river valley. And then we would treat those people as we would any other evacuees, as we have extensive experience of, and create a reception centre to house those people in exactly the same way as we have for people from out
So
of
we
town.
consider this a remote, very remote possibility, and even if it were to happen, we have the systems in place.
It's very low risk, and unfortunately we've got a lot of experience, in terms of dealing with these types of things. Our fire crews have brought back knowledge and experience from helping others that we now have within the city should we need to deploy it. And also we've got extensive experience, probably the best in the province in terms of housing evacuees, and we're very mindful that at some point, hopefully not, but at some point we could have Edmontonians who are in need of housing, and we have the means and the experience to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much for the update. I think to date we have not had the large-scale simulation exercise with council. Is that right? I think we planned for something last year, and then we had all kinds of real-time emergencies to manage.
We had to cancel it. We're going to plan it again sometime between, we don't have a date yet, but sometime between January and March of 2025 we'll have that event.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And so I do very much look forward to that, and hopefully something does get set up. Because I feel like so far when it comes to emergency, a lot of it's about receiving information. I appreciate the toolkits that we get to for us to share it with our residents. But I think some more, hands-on experiential learning for us would be really helpful. I'm curious about some of the secondments to the, to the various evacuation center and the EOC. So are those secondments across the city corporation?
So it depends yes, they are. It depends which ones you're talking about. So the ESERT, the emergency support team that we have deployed that's helping with the wildfires right now, they're come from across. There's lots of people. We have 1,000 people registered for that assignment, if you will, and we're on an average we use about right now we're down to about 5, but on a daily basis. But we were as high as 27 people, and they're from across the corporation.
Okay. Do you have a sense of so when the folks are seconded, what happens to the service or job that they are supposed to be providing in their home base?
Well, one of two things would happen, I would think, and this is speculation from experience, and that is their work would either sit there and not get done, or they would have somebody else pick it up, and then they would continue when they came back.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of which team or which service levels are most impacted by these secondments?
I think just back to your first question, Councillor Tang, we don't typically second continuously. People volunteer for shifts, and it has to be done within the context of the operational area that they come from. So there is a level of oversight from the supervisors of those staff. So it's not kind of always, continual impact on the area that they come from.
I mean, during emergency time, I think we all pitch in that, I think that's important. I think what I'm worried about is are there services then that are not being delivered because we are managing emergencies? And as we get more frequency of these evacuations, is that going to be a concern?
I think that's absolutely a concern. Certainly we see the stress on some of the work that we do now. I know that comms is a perfect example of driving into these spaces. It's a lot of communication, and it drives a lot of our comm staff. So that certainly has an impact across the organization on what we can deliver.
And they might not be doing communication on the things that they were supposed to be doing.
That's correct.
Right. And so there's an opportunity cost here too, or I don't know what the term is, work lost. And I'm not how you capture that metric.
Yeah, I think we've seen a bit of that stress through this summer for sure.
Yeah.
And I think as we go forward and we talk about what does the evolution of the program look like, I think those are the things that we have to take into account in terms of how frequent are these events going to be. We're seeing them more often, and how do we resource that to a level that doesn't impact the work that we're trying to do. So you got to try and plan for what I would call the smoothness of the period, and be able to surge activities in a certain way, which we do with our volunteer shifts, things like that, to try and smooth out that problem inside the organization.
Yeah,
but there is a bit of stress that we're starting to see.
I mean, financial reimbursement, I think, is one thing. I think I'm more worried about kind of like services that's supposed to be delivered that's not going to, and that gets delayed and delays a whole bunch of other stuff, and that there's a cost there that might not be monetized, but impacts city service. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, go ahead.
I was just going to add something to that. So one of the things that we do is that we work closely with the supervisors, and if somebody comes to volunteer, they're not there for a very long period of time. So we try to make sure we're moving people in, moving that person out, and bring somebody else in.
Okay.
So we share the workload so that not one area is too badly impacted.
Okay, great, thank you. And just in the last 30 seconds, I want to come back to the thread that Councillor Salvador was having. Perhaps not directly requesting data, but I certainly recall many times during the transit safety conversation, we have asked for questions around, are people actually getting connected to services or housing or recovery or whatever? I have requested with DCM Flamin for what's the possibility like for a coordinated presentation, maybe an info session, I don't know. I just want to flag that I have made that request. So, no response needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Neck.
Thank you, Councillor Carmel. So then maybe just quickly on that very last point, do we have, because I don't want to ask more questions about the navigation center, because I don't know if that's as fitting with this particular committee, but do we have a report or a presentation, something that's coming where we can dig into that a little bit more? Because I appreciate the numbers I heard from EPS as well, but I have a lot of questions, so I'm not sure today's the right day.
Yeah, I don't have that information with me today.
Okay.
However, I'll make sure that we get that information to council for sure.
Yeah.
Whether that comes in an information brief, I'll figure out the best way to do that, but we'll make sure that information gets to you.
Okay. Yeah, I think at some point it might be worth just a separate conversation about it, because I'm still a little uncertain, and I've heard the point around some of the numbers maybe in the media article aren't right, but I think we also have regular tracking, and I think it's just maybe good to get all the numbers out so that folks can have a full picture of what's happening and what's going well and maybe what's not going so well. So I'll wait for that appropriate time then. Okay. I think the only other question I had just tied a little bit to Councillor Paquette's questions. He was asking a lot about sort of, our state of readiness. I've been getting a lot of those questions from residents too, especially because of the Jasper situations, of folks just wanting to know, like, how can they learn more? And I know in the presentation we talked about communication. I've heard some good things today that I don't think is available currently on the City of Edmonton Wildfires website. Are we looking to input more? So I'm getting a lot of questions about how are we different in terms of our river valley? What are the tools that we're using? We talked about the drones. And I just, instead of, I think right now I've sort of been getting those questions and then sending them over to fire rescue for individual replies, but I'm starting to get enough that I'm just wondering if there's a way we can get that in a central spot.
Yeah, we'll take it away and work on trying to improve that communication to make sure it's out there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just looking to save you time from a lot of individual replies and me a lot of time, and well, everyone a lot of time.
I think what we recognize, and I've said this in a number of kind of presentation environments, we're a city in transition. We're a large urban centre, and we're an urban fire department that typically is focused on urban firefighting. And we recognise the climate change and the effects that it's having and the new risks or vulnerabilities that it's creating. So we're a fire service in transition too, in the sense of embracing things that are typically more reflected in a rural environment. Right. And so we're bringing those pieces into play now, and they're becoming part and parcel of core business, if you will. So we're in that transition phase. So there is some work to do, but we recognise that. And we've started to do those things. The Fire Smart initiative is but one example, and I think that's key. I can't emphasise enough for residents, any that are listening, or your constituents, go to the FireSmart website. It's one of the best websites I've ever seen in terms of being intuitive and giving people the information they need. We've seen in kind of repeated analysis of kind of different municipalities that have been impacted. Fort McMurray is probably the best example. Those properties that were fire smarted tended to survive.
Yeah.
You know, kind of, you know, with the types of materials on the exterior of the structure, the type of landscaping that they use, the fencing materials and so on, it can make a difference.
Absolutely.
And I think that was evident to an extent in Jasper too.
Absolutely, yeah, and so I would echo, I think the FireSmart website's great. I think the questions I'm asking are a little bit more about what are we doing, not so much to help each individual household, but like as a city, what are the actions we're taking in the River Valley? What are the steps? What are the tools? And again, just looking maybe if there's another space we can sort of point people to, because it's just now fresh in everyone's mind, and I'm finding myself sending a lot of one-offs, and it just feels like it's probably not great use of your time either. Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Councillor Catmull. So thank you very much for the presentation. There are lots of good points there, good information there, and also I heard some of my colleagues ask many good questions. So we get answers for certain questions. So I will not repeat those questions, but I do have two follow-up questions. And one question is about the risk prevention. Risk prevention is really important piece in our emergency management work. For the South Edmonton and the Southwest Edmonton area, there are two river systems. One is White Mud Creek, another one is Black Mud Creek. And I heard lots of comments, and also my constituent contacting regarding some safety or some like emergency response for this two river system. So would you mind to provide a little bit more information on those?
I think that the starting point that we've made as a city, and I'll give huge kudos to our parks staff, they were the ones who initiated the risk assessment that's been done. We were able to get funding. Some of you may recall, I think it was late last year, we got the funding, $40,000, and they engaged a company who conducted an extensive risk assessment and created a document for the White Mud Creek. So that was a good starting point to understand that area, where the risks are greatest, to then drive or inform and drive, future activity, be it vegetation management, looking at things through a fire rescue perspective. And then parks were also able to kind of get a PhD student, I think it was, from the University of Alberta, who conducted their research and did a citywide risk assessment, which would encompass the River Valley and other areas as well. And that's going to inform and drive future work. That's only happened this year, so it's a work in progress. But we are very much informed and ahead of where a lot of urban centres typically would be.
So that study also covered the Black Mud Creek as well?
I would have to defer to my parks kind of colleagues there just to make sure, but we did do a citywide assessment, so I would assume by default that was covered too.
Okay, thank you for that. That's first question. Second question related to dead trees. So for the dead trees, and then I do receive some emails and from South Edmonton and in certain area. And is there any specific action right now is taken to prevent some risk and from the dead trees? And in the south and the southwest area, and then specifically related to those two Black Mud Creek and White Mud Creek river system.
I'll pass that over to Craig's group.
Yeah, I'd probably start by saying our natural areas team does do sweeps for, I think what you're referring to is like the deadfall, like the fuel load in those natural areas and the risk that would pose for fires. Like, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably prep the team to be able to elaborate a little bit more detail. I know we got a couple folks with some more, detailed knowledge. I see a couple chats coming up. So what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Travis, who could probably elaborate a little bit more on what we do with that deadfall and trying to remove that fuel load in those natural areas.
I don't mind it to follow up offline as well, but I do want to mention this because this is the factor and then how we prevent the fire risk and from those dead trees.
What I can say right now is I know the team does a lot of that removing, chipping, portion to get rid of that fuel. They do remove dead trees, pruning. There is like discussions with FRS in terms of getting access to those natural areas for fire response. Planting more fire resistant trees. Like there's a host of different activities that the team does do right now to address, I believe, the concern that you're talking about.
And one just addition to that is that the fire program also has this drone program that they've just launched that allows us to identify dead vegetation versus live vegetation. So, it helps us identify areas of fuel source and give us the ability to kind of deal with those areas too. So that's super helpful.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much. Just a few last questions. Pulling on a few of the themes that I've heard this afternoon. So recognizing the EOC is being wound down in September, I've heard how, lessons learned are going to be carried forward. Just wondering if administration will be doing an evaluation and reporting on the effectiveness of this approach, in collaboration with our partners, obviously.
Yeah, our intention is to run a debrief to look at the lessons learned. Yep.
And will that be shared with council? Will that be available for us?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And then, really hearing the need for some of that more robust data collection for us to be able to have a clearer picture, a clear story. What work is in place to address that moving forward?
I was just discussing that with our folks here. So definitely we will take that away and bring back information for council on a couple of things. One is, the criteria in which we initiate the EOC and deactivate the EOC is what I've heard from today. So I think that's important. It sounds like we will come back with that information for all of council as well, but also looking at their provincial colleagues and having conversation about the transitional numbers that we've got. So not just activations or people pushing to the EOC, but which ones of those actually took on that help, moved on to different housing initiatives or programs within the provincial government, and the effectiveness of the program itself. So what does that transition look like from point of contact to resource?
Great. And then also I heard that commitment to the evaluation report as well.
Correct.
Great. Perfect. Just the last one, another topic that's been top of mind this week, of course, is budget. Just want to understand how some of the risk management that happens through this work is helping to inform our budget. And also just what is our budgeting process for EOC? Do we run variances in that? How do we accommodate those surges? Recognizing that in some cases we can bill back to the province or to other municipalities when we're supporting them, but when it's activities in our own city, how are we budgeting for that?
I think for the majority of costs, there are salaried staff. So the cost is the cost. Obviously, if it's after hours, evenings, weekends, there's sometimes, not in all instances, in some occasions there's overtime implications, which we budget to a certain extent, but sometimes we do run a variance. They're not significant in the grand scheme of the numbers that were presented yesterday in other areas, just for context. But yeah, typically, the EOC and the Office of Emergency Management doesn't run huge variances like we've maybe seen in other areas.
But certainly there's no doubt that increasing, emergency activations is going to put pressure on the budget. Mm-hmm. We've seen that to date on various different levels. Maybe not as far as the EOC activation goes, but the emergencies or the stuff that we're dealing with in our city, it certainly creates that pressure for us.
Yeah.
I think the cost, if we look back on the last year, is to the people. Mm-hmm. We have a fairly small team, and they've been running pretty constantly. Never in my career, and I'm old, and I've been doing this a while. I've never seen activations on this scale and for this length of time.
Yeah, no.
And it's a credit to the staff that they're managing to hold it together.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that and deeply appreciate all the work that those individuals do and all the other City of Edmonton employees who step up to help support as well. I think, probably not in our most imminent budget conversations, but I think something to think about with the preparation of the next 4-year budget cycle as well, in terms of ensuring that we're accommodating for that increase in activations. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. You read my mind, Acting Chief, because I was concerned about the overtime that we heard about yesterday and the impact. But you said like the cost to the teams. So is it their mental health as well that's impacted?
There's no doubt that these instances have impact on employees' mental health and strain on their personal lives, for sure.
So that does relate to what we were talking to yesterday. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and again, and what Councillor Tang was talking about too, as far as, work not getting done, and if we are trying to get that work done, then we're probably having to pay overtime or fill in from other areas. That might then have a downstream impact for overtime in the area they're coming from. Tiffany is...
To an extent, I think the biggest impact, you mentioned opportunity cost. I think it's what else could we be doing if we weren't constantly being activated, especially the Office of Emergency Management staff. That's the biggest thing there. The firefighters typically are not deployed other than into the reception centre, but that's kind of outside of their regular shifts, so there isn't an implication in terms of call-ins to cover for them. We don't allow staff who should be scheduled for firefighting duties to attend the reception centre to work there. It's in their scheduled off time.
Okay.
But
they're not volunteering. They do get paid for the time that they're working in the centers. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been trying to figure out, because I'm looking at that slide 5 again, and the different things listed. So to me, NHL playoffs and labor action, I wouldn't classify that as an emergency. So I've been trying to find a definition for it, and I did find one in the Emergency Management Act, the province, saying that it's an event that requires prompt coordination of action or special regulation. So I'm just wondering, why are these things like for the encampments, for the NHL playoffs, why is that managed through the EOC?
Yes, sometimes you're going to activate the EOC for preventative measures. So when you think about things like the NHL playoffs, there are potential for riot activity or things like that. You want to be prepared with the team and the action plan just in case those things happen, so you don't get an incident like, say, Vancouver had during the Stanley Cup playoffs. So in some instances, you're being proactive, ready, and just in case something were to come about.
Isn't that something that the organization should plan for then? And I don't mean the City of Edmonton organization, I mean the one putting on the event.
No, they certainly do. They certainly do, but it takes a whole city when you get into those types of events, that's for sure. It's a coordinated activity.
Okay, but yeah, I'm just relating it to the word emergency and that, and so and I guess the costs related to that as well. I'm concerned about budget. I don't like the 13% that we talked about yesterday. So, so going back to like the navigation center, I'm looking at the updates that we've received from, and is it Ryan or Rain? I'm sorry, Ryan. Okay. So May 24th, there was 305 people, or up until that point, there was 305 people taken to the navigation center. 2.5 months later, August 9th, there was only like 18. So again, does that require that level of coordination of the EOC? And back to Councillor Rutherford's earlier question is why was it still being used or in operation?
So as I said, the transition's coming on September the 3rd, but what all the work is organizing teams to go to the, it's really a multi-corporation response, right? It requires the police, it requires park rangers, cleanup crews, Parks and Roads. It requires a lot of coordination, a lot of people to make it happen so that nobody gets hurt and that our homeless population gets the help that they need. And so we're going to coordinate all those resources. It takes time and effort to do that. And that's why we do it.
And the thing to understand as well, obviously they identify sites that, are in need of, cleanup and people who may need to be transported for help, but we never know, you know, in advance quite how many people we're going to engage with on a daily basis. It's kind of, you know, variable. And so it's easy to see the count at the end of the day and say only 18 people got services. I'd say that's 18 people that got valuable services and is a good use of the time. But it is hard to predict quite how many people you're going to engage with on a daily basis. It's variable. And yeah.
Okay, my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very pleased to hear that an evaluation and debrief will be shared back with us. That's fantastic. And pleased to hear that it sounds like work is already underway and conversations are happening around getting some of that additional data to help us gain some more insight into the efficacy of the program. I did have one further question. So I'm wondering, to what degree is the city's affordable housing and homelessness team involved in the encampment response since the EOC was activated and stood up?
Jennifer's not here, but I think we have Roger here instead of Jennifer. I might have to defer to somebody, I think. Is Roger here?
Yeah, it is, sorry, we'd have to defer. I'm not sure exactly how involved the homelessness team was in the EOC operations. Certainly in some of the planning work beforehand, they're involved, but on a day-to-day basis, I couldn't give you a proper answer.
The conduit into kind of housing support and services was through the navigation centre. They are the conduit and connection into all the types of organisations that our people typically would engage with. So that was the way that we were trying to streamline it, and that's the way that we were allowing those people in need to access services. Right.
I guess a few questions from that then. So if the navigation centre was sort of that entry point, like how was the city's affordable housing and homelessness team connected with the navigation centre then? Like, I'm just trying to piece that together. I know, just thinking back to the enhanced encampment response plan, obviously connecting folks with housing was a pretty central part of that, and the affordable housing and homelessness team is that conduit on the city side.
Yeah, unfortunately, Stacy's not on the call, so. But I can get the information for you on exactly how that is, and maybe send that information to you after this.
Okay, yeah, I'd really appreciate that. And just to be even more specific, would love to know what that looked like, sort of pre and post, or I guess while the EOC was activated versus typical involvement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Do we have a motion on the table for this? No, not yet. Oh,
No,
okay.
we do not.
Okay, I'm happy to, no motion needed? No. I'm happy to move this to receive for information. And just some final, I guess, points. I'll be, thanks for that. I'll be interested in the answer as well. I mean, I think while I had suspected that it's the navigation center that's really redirecting folks to housing, but given we have a dedicated role, we have a task force, we are also developing, municipal policy and procedures to get folks housed. I think, it would be important to kind of connect those dots. So I was curious, with some of the communication initiatives, glad they're happening. How effective are they? Or how do you measure how effective are they?
Do you mean things like the Fire Smart initiatives and things like that?
Yeah, Fire Smart. Like, I'm also thinking, last winter when you had the fireworks roadside communication, and I don't know if it's because of that or because, it's been some time since the implementation of that policy, but we saw less, fireworks go off. So I guess I'm just wondering, how are you, how do we know that these initiatives in communication and education are having an effect?
I wouldn't say we're sophisticated in our analysis of these things. We look at, we try and be proactive in terms of the engagement. And then, you know, in terms of the firework incidents, we look at number of incidents, and, you know, we put 2 and 2 together and assume that they were effective, quite frankly.
Okay.
At the moment, it's not much more sophisticated than that. We do look at traditional metrics, you know, how many social media engagement, how many visits to websites and things like that. So we're quantifying, you know, we're looking to see, has there been an uptick in engagement? And then, obviously, if we're seeing positive impact on behaviours, then we're assuming that those initiatives were effective. I think there may well be opportunity to get a little bit more sophisticated than that.
I could just maybe add to that a little bit, Councillor Tang. So we are taking analytics of the media releases and what those click-through rates would look like compared to what our normal click-through rate on just a regular PSA or media release. So we benchmarked to the standards that we already have at the city. And then from the social media perspective, we're not only looking at the number of comments that we get or reposts, but what that audience engagement looks like. So is that positive, negative, neutral comments in relation to the posts that we have? So we keep all of that in mind.
Yeah, and as we maintain that momentum on the communication, obviously I hope we have less fire, right, and that kind of stuff. Something I'm very interested in and look forward to some follow-up conversation with your team. On attachment 1, I'm just kind of curious for some of those numbers. Do you have a breakdown of like what is city-led and which activation is because of the wildfires? Like say, so if you look at like Q3, for example, I think that's 10, and then Q1 there was like 20. I'm assuming you have a more of a granular, like how many are city-led, how many are in response to.
Are you talking about the fires?
Yeah, I'm looking at attachment 1 for EOC. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry, not, yeah. So attachment 1, the EOC activation with the, you know, it's trending, and I'm just curious if you have that further broken down into.
It's not in the report, but we could definitely get that information for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
On what that breakout looks like.
Okay, thank you. Anyways, very comprehensive. Thank you all, and thank you for our partners for being here. I don't have a lot of questions for you. I wish I did.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, we have a motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak? Oh, Councillor Rutherford, questions or speaking?
To speak.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I will receive this for information today, but I think first and foremost, kudos on so many nimble emergency activations. I think, you know, we saw some of the potential risk at the playoff season in 2023, and we really mitigated that risk in 2024. You know, our response with the wildfires has been amazing, but I do want to stress, and I'm glad I heard the city manager say that he heard that today from the conversation. I don't think it is an appropriate use of an EOC to be addressing sustained long-term collaborations, and that to me is a whole other standard operating procedure. And how do we work in our systems for best systems of care, as opposed to it being an EOC. So I really look to that being stood down, but also understanding, so what's next, so that we don't end up in the same conversations we are again. I want to continue to see that compassionate approach. I also would highlight what you provided us today are outputs, not outcomes, with regards to the encampment clearing. Number of people that visited the navigation center, that's an output. I care about outcomes. I'm only interested in outcomes and not narratives without numbers and not numbers without narratives. I want to see the total complexity of this file. It is important to Edmontonians, and therefore it is important to this council, and I know it is important to administration, that we understand how we are helping our most vulnerable while balancing this health and safety risks that really do exist from encampments. So thank you for those answers today. I look forward to the further information that we will get on that, and ideally a further conversation. But in general, very proud of the work that we as a city have done on many other fronts, and look forward to that tabletop simulation as mentioned by Councillor Tang as well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tang to close.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for all the responses and all the takeaways. I just want to say, you know, I think the last while has been really difficult, and I hear the efforts directly from you. I see it when I do walkabouts with some of the operation teams. When talking to the community, I know a lot of the challenges we're facing takes a toll, not just on Edmontonians, but also on our public servants. So just want to, deep gratitude towards the work that you do. In the ward, we've had to kind of direct few calls directly to EOC, and you swiftly resolved it. And I just want to convey some of those appreciation from residents and businesses who reached out because they are kind of don't feel like they have any other options. There's always going to be questions. I think there will always, about ways that we can do better, and I look forward to that continued approach. It's so hard, and I think about next year, and I think about what that wind down, that evaluation, and what is it going to mean next year if we're going to be I'm thinking, are we going to be needing this again? And those concerns is always going to be there, but that doesn't take away from, I think, the efforts your staff and your teams have been putting in. So that's all I want to say. Thank you for the report.
Great, thank you. Please vote.
Councillor Jans, are you with us? We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. And that completes the agenda of this meeting of the Emergency Advisory Committee. So a reminder that we will return to the City Council non-regular meeting at 3:15 this afternoon, 3:15. Thanks, everyone.